Remember when a romantic comedy could spark a debate that people are still having more than 30 years later? Back in 1989, when Harry Met Sally arrived in theaters with one simple yet unforgettable question: can men and women really just be friends? What begins as an awkward cross-country road trip gradually unfolds into a 12-year journey through New York City, where two very different people move from strangers to reluctant friends and, eventually, to something much deeper. Starring Billy Crystal as Harry Burns, Meg Ryan as Sally Albright, Carrie Fisher as Mary, and Bruno Kirby as Jess, the film was directed by Rob Reiner and written by Nora Ephron. It quickly became one of the most beloved romantic comedies ever made, creating a blueprint that countless films would later follow. Even after all these years, it continues to charm audiences, and today we're counting down 15 fascinating facts about the movie that even longtime fans may not know. Stick around until the end, because the story behind the film's most famous scene involves a member of royalty in a way almost nobody expected. One of the biggest surprises is that Billy Crystal was far from the first choice to play Harry Burns. Before Crystal stepped into the role, the script circulated through Hollywood, landing on the desks of several major stars. Tom Hanks was among them, but he couldn't connect with Harry's outlook on life. At the time, Hanks was going through a divorce from Samantha Lewis, yet according to his future wife, Rita Wilson, he was actually enjoying being single. Because of that, he couldn't understand why Harry would be so emotionally devastated after a breakup. Albert Brooks also passed on the role, believing the neurotic New York humor felt too similar to another filmmaker's style, and he wanted to avoid being compared throughout his career. Rob Reiner also approached Michael Keaton and Richard Dreyfuss, making it amusing to imagine Batman or the star of Jaws delivering Harry's cynical observations about relationships. In the end, though, Billy Crystal brought something none of the others could. Beneath Harry's sarcasm, Crystal revealed warmth, vulnerability, humor, and enough charm to make audiences understand why Sally could never completely walk away from him, even when he drove her absolutely crazy. The relationship between Harry and Sally feels authentic because the characters were inspired by two real people, director Rob Reiner and writer Nora Ephron. After his divorce, Reiner poured his own loneliness, skepticism, and endless overthinking into Harry. Ephron once admitted that Harry was essentially Rob on screen. Sally, meanwhile, reflected Ephron herself. Instead of writing from imagination alone, Reiner spent hours sharing his personal experiences and thoughts about dating with Ephron, who responded by creating a character that balanced him perfectly. Harry became chaotic, pessimistic, and impulsive, while Sally represented order, optimism, and careful attention to every detail. Their conversations about relationships weren't simply fictional dialogue, they echoed years of real-life debates between Reiner and Ephron. Harry argued from the perspective of a cynic, Sally from the perspective of a believer, and neither side truly won. That balance is exactly why audiences have continued arguing for decades over whether Harry and Sally truly belong together. Although Nora Ephron wrote the screenplay, Billy Crystal contributed far more to Harry's personality than many people realize. Once filming began, Crystal constantly improvised, adding jokes, observations, and emotional moments that made Harry feel more human. Some of the movie's funniest scenes weren't originally on the page at all. The legendary Katz's deli sequence, for example, was initially intended to be nothing more than Sally explaining that women sometimes fake orgasms. It was Meg Ryan who suggested demonstrating the idea instead of merely talking about it, transforming the moment into one of the most iconic comedy scenes in film history. Other memorable exchanges also emerged spontaneously. During the drawing game, Ryan scribbled something that Bruno Kirby mistakenly interpreted as baby fish mouth, prompting Crystal to continue the joke by insisting it was sweeping the nation. Even Harry's heartfelt New Year's Eve speech, where he admits loving the way Sally wrinkles her nose when she looks at him like he's crazy, was shaped heavily by Crystal rather than the original screenplay. Those personal touches helped transform Harry Burns from a typical romantic lead into one of cinema's most memorable characters. Another unforgettable sequence nearly pushed the cast and crew to their limits. The famous split-screen phone conversation, where Harry and Sally each call their best friends after spending the night together, appears effortless on screen. In reality, it required 61 takes to perfect. Rather than filming each actor separately and editing everything together later, Rob Reiner insisted on capturing the timing live because he believed the comedy depended on genuine interaction. 3-bedroom sets were constructed side by side on a single soundstage, complete with functioning telephone lines, allowing Billy Crystal to actually speak with Bruno Kirby while Meg Ryan talked directly to Carrie Fisher. The challenge was enormous, for actors had to deliver multiple pages of overlapping dialogue without anyone making a mistake. If even one person stumbled over a single word, everyone had to begin again from the start. After finally achieving a flawless performance around take 50, disaster struck when birds nesting in the studio rafters chirped throughout the recording, ruining the audio completely. Later, after another nearly perfect take, Bruno Kirby accidentally missed the final line, forcing yet another reset. Only on take 61 did everything finally come together, resulting in less than 90 seconds of seamless screen time that most audiences never realized had required such extraordinary effort. One of the movie's most memorable moments wasn't carefully scripted at all. During the museum scene, Billy Crystal suddenly slipped into an exaggerated Eastern European accent while talking about paprikash and pecan pie. None of it appeared in the screenplay, and Meg Ryan had no idea it was coming. If you watch the scene closely, you'll notice the exact moment she nearly bursts into laughter. She even glances toward Rob Reiner as if silently asking whether she should stay in character, and he simply encouraged her to keep going. The laughter audiences see in the finished film is genuine. That spontaneous reaction became one of the scene's greatest strengths, proving that sometimes the funniest moments are the ones nobody plans. Another charming detail involves the elderly couples who appear throughout the movie sharing stories about how they met. Those touching interviews feel almost too perfect to be real, but the stories themselves actually were. The idea began during a dinner at Alan Horn's home when Rob Reiner asked Horn's father how he had met his wife. The heartfelt story inspired Reiner and Nora Ephron to build an entire framing device around real-life romances. Whenever Ephron found herself stuck while writing the screenplay, she wandered through the production offices asking cast, crew members, and even their parents to share stories of how they fell in love. The most memorable tales were reshaped slightly and then performed by actors, giving the movie an authentic warmth that perfectly balanced Harry and Sally's complicated relationship. One of the sweetest scenes in the film also came directly from real life. Harry and Sally spend an evening in separate apartments watching Casablanca together while talking on the phone. The moment feels incredibly intimate despite the fact that they aren't even in the same room. Nora Ephron borrowed the idea from Rob Reiner and Billy Crystal, who actually used to call one another, tune into the same television program, and watch movies together from their own homes. Long before streaming services or online watch parties existed, they had already discovered a simple way to share the experience. The scene quietly demonstrates something Harry and Sally refuse to admit throughout much of the story. People who claim to be just friends don't usually rearrange their evenings simply to watch an old movie together over the phone. Even the title of the film took years to figure out. Before settling on When Harry Met Sally, the project went through numerous working titles, including scenes from A Friendship, Boy Meets Girl, Just Friends, It Had to Be You, Harry, This Is Sally, and several others. Nora Ephron struggled to find a title that captured the film's unique mix of friendship, romance, and comedy. Rob Reiner eventually turned the naming process into a contest among the crew, even offering a case of champagne to whoever came up with the winning suggestion. Although When Harry Met Sally ultimately became the clear favorite, Ephron never completely embraced it, especially the famous ellipsis that appeared in the title, which was Reiner's idea rather than hers. Ironically, one of the most recognizable titles in romantic comedy history remained something its own writer never entirely loved. The film's unforgettable ending almost didn't happen either. Rob Reiner originally planned for Harry and Sally to simply walk away from each other with no grand reunion or romantic declaration. At the time, that ending reflected his own outlook on relationships. However, during pre-production, everything changed. Cinematographer Barry Sonnenfeld introduced Reiner to Michelle Singer, predicting they would eventually marry. He was right. As Reiner fell in love during the making of the movie, his perspective changed completely. Suddenly, He believed Harry and Sally deserved a hopeful ending after all. That personal transformation led to the iconic New Year's Eve finale, where Harry races across the city to confess his love. Reiner and Michelle Singer married the same year the film premiered, making the ending a reflection of his own happiness as much as Harry's. Music also played a major role in the film's success. When Rob Reiner searched for the perfect voice to capture the classic New York atmosphere, he wasn't looking for an established star. Instead, a friend introduced him to a 21-year-old pianist named Harry Connick Jr. Reiner immediately recognized something special in the young musician's voice, which reminded him of Frank Sinatra. Connick recorded the soundtrack, giving timeless standards like It Had to Be You Fresh Life. The album became a massive success, selling millions of copies and earning Connick his first Grammy Award. Overnight, he went from performing in small venues to hearing his own songs playing in airports and public places around the country. In many ways, the film launched two Harrys into stardom: Harry Burns, the unforgettable fictional character, and Harry Connick Jr., whose music became forever associated with one of the greatest romantic comedies ever made. The final stretch of fascinating behind-the-scenes stories is just as memorable. Sally's famously complicated food orders weren't invented by Nora Ephron. They were inspired by her real-life habit of customizing every meal she ordered. Billy Crystal also found himself in the awkward position of romancing director Rob Reiner's daughter on screen, while Meg Ryan initially felt like an outsider because Reiner and Crystal already shared such a close friendship before filming began. Despite those challenges, Ryan and Crystal created one of cinema's most believable romantic pairings. The legendary Katz's Deli scene transformed a famous New York restaurant into an international tourist attraction, with visitors still lining up to sit at the exact table where Sally delivered the performance that made movie history. Finally, perhaps the most unexpected story of all involved Princess Diana. Sitting beside Billy Crystal at the London premiere, she laughed louder than anyone during the famous deli scene, surprising the cast, who had feared an awkward royal reaction. Crystal later joked about their playful exchange before the movie began, and Diana reportedly loved the film so much that she arranged private screenings at the palace. It's a remarkable ending to the story of a movie that continues to entertain audiences decades later. More than 30 years after its release, When Harry Met Sally remains one of the defining romantic comedies of all time, not only because of its unforgettable dialogue and performances, but because of the countless real-life stories, improvisations, and happy accidents that came together to create something truly timeless.